John Harbaugh may have just dropped a massive clue about the Ravens' future, and it completely changes the roster battle in Baltimore. We're talking about decisions that could shake the very core of this team because roster cuts are right around the corner, and there just isn't enough room for everybody. Some young players lit up the preseason, but that still might not be enough to save their spot. And right in the middle of all this chaos, one guy who looked like a lock for the roster may have just lost ground to an unexpected challenger. What Harbaugh said made one thing crystal clear. Special teams could be the deciding factor in who stays and who goes, and that choice had come at a very high cost for one of the Ravens' most talked about names. Every year in the NFL, there's a moment that brings nerves for players and coaches alike. Final roster cuts. Teams have to trim down to just 53 players, and for Baltimore Ravens, that's a nightmare. Why? Because this roster is loaded with talent. What sounds like a blessing on paper actually becomes a problem in reality, since even good players who've shown flashes in preseason could find themselves without a spot. And the danger is bigger than just cutting a guy and stashing him on the practice squad. Other teams across the league are watching closely, ready to swoop in the moment Baltimore lets someone go. If a young player has shown too much talent, he won't even make it back to the practice squad. He'll be wearing another uniform before the Ravens can blink. This year, the dilemma is even more intense. Baltimore nailed the 2025 draft, bringing in a rookie class that already looks promising. On top of that, their undrafted free agents have been turning heads too, proving they can compete with anyone. That means a fight for roster spots isn't just rookies versus veterans. It's every man for himself, regardless of how he got here. That's the cruel reality of the NFL. Sometimes even playing well just isn't enough. And in Baltimore, where the baseline level of talent is already sky high, the margin for error shrinks even more. Some names feel almost locked in, but others are going to have to fight tooth and nail all the way to the final cut down. And that's where the rookies really shake things up, because their early impact has completely changed the dynamic of this roster battle. Every offseason, the NFL draft brings hope. But in 2025, the Ravens might have hit the jackpot. This rookie class didn't just show up with hype, they delivered. Players like Ruben Lowry and Keon Martin had standout preseasons, proving themselves in different situations and pretty much locking down roster spots already. That kind of instant impact throws the whole roster math out of whack, because the moment rookies show they're ready, someone else's chances disappear. And it's not just the draft picks. The undrafted free agents Baltimore brought and have been making waves too, showing they can compete head-to-head with anyone. That only ramps up the pressure inside the locker room, especially for back-end veterans or guys still trying to prove they deserve the coach's trust. Now, on the one hand, this kind of competition is great. It ensures only the very best players make the roster. But it's also a double-edged sword. Whoever doesn't make it in Baltimore might go shine somewhere else, maybe even strengthening a direct playoff rival. That's a risk the Ravens know all too well. And it's part of what makes these decisions so tough. And in the middle of all that competition, one name has stood out more than anyone else: Jay Higgins. The linebacker turned heads with his play this preseason and became one of the hottest topics in Baltimore. The crazy part? Higgins has done almost everything right on the field, but his roster spot is still anything but guaranteed. Jay Higgins arrived in Baltimore without much fanfare, but he quickly flipped that narrative on its head. During the preseason, he was simply one of the best linebackers in the entire NFL, according to Pro Football Focus, earning an incredible 90.9 grade. On the field, it felt like he was everywhere, pressuring the quarterback, holding his own in coverage, and sniffing out runs before they even developed. He's that type of player you notice on almost every snap. With numbers and highlights like that, you'd think his roster spot was a lock, right? Not so fast. Baltimore's situation is a little trickier. Higgins' raw talent is undeniable, but the Ravens don't just base roster decisions on defense alone. Special teams play carries a lot of weight, and that's where Higgins runs into trouble. He's shown improvement on special teams, no doubt, but his direct competition isn't just any linebacker. It's Jake Hummel, a player signed specifically to be a special teams ace. Higgins may have excelled in the traditional linebacker role, but unless he can beat out Hummel in the area the Ravens value most right now, his odds take a big hit. And to make matters worse, John Harbaugh has already given a pretty telling hint about where things stand, and it put Hummel one step ahead. And when the head coach himself goes public with that kind of statement, you know Higgins will need a miracle to flip the script. Jake Hummel may not have generated as many headlines as Higgins this preseason, but don't underestimate his value. He was brought in to replace Chris Board, the Ravens' longtime special team star, and from day one it was clear that would be his role. In today's NFL, where games are decided by the smallest details, having a reliable special teams player can be just as crucial as a starter on offense or defense. Through camp and the preseason, Hummel delivered exactly what the coaches expected. Same intensity, same discipline, the kind of consistency that wins trust. And Harbaugh made that trust public after practice, saying straight up, Hummel's going to make the team. He's going to be a big part of what we're doing. When those words come from the man making final cuts, it sounded a lot like a stamp of approval. Here's the thing. Higgins dazzles with raw talent, but Hummel brings something the Ravens might value even more, proven reliability in a highly specific role. He's not going to fill up the stat sheet, but he's the kind of guy who quietly helps you win close games when every play matters. And if anyone still doubted how much weight special teams would carry this year, Harbaugh himself erased all of that with his next comments.
All right, we're already past the halfway point of this video, but before we continue, I noticed you haven't left a like yet. It's really important because it helps YouTube keep showing you my content so I can keep bringing you the best news about the Baltimore Ravens. So go ahead and hit that like button. It's free and it really helps. Thanks. Now let's get back to it.
John Harbaugh has always been a special teams guy. It's where he cut his teeth before becoming a head coach. And this preseason, he's doubling down on that philosophy. According to Harbaugh, special teams will play a huge role in deciding the final 53. The new kickoff rule, which completely changes the dynamics of returns, only makes this phase of the game more important. Teams that prepare well here will have a real edge. Harbaugh emphasized that roles matter, and you've got to play at a high level. Translation: if you're going to make this roster, you'd better bring value in more than one phase of the game. For linebackers, it's not enough to stop the run or pressure the quarterback. You've also got to cover kicks, block, and make plays in those hidden moments that can flip a game. That mindset gives guys like Hummel the upper hand. He's already proven himself as one of the better special teamers in the league, and the coaches know exactly what they'll get from him. Higgins has made progress in that area, but the difference is that Hummel's already battle-tested against top-level competition. And in a race this tight, even the smallest edge can tip the scales. Which brings us back to Higgins. He's improved on special teams. But was it enough to actually close the gap? You can't say Jay Higgins didn't try. During the preseason, he clearly put in the work to contribute on special teams. He earned an 80.0 PFF grade in that area, showing week-to-week progress, discipline, and a willingness to embrace a role that doesn't get much glory but can keep a career alive in the NFL. The coaches definitely notice the effort. But here's the harsh truth. In Baltimore, being good isn't always good enough. Jake Hummel had an even stronger showing last year, posting an 85.6 PFF grade against starting caliber competition. That track record puts him a step ahead. Higgins has potential, sure, but Hummel has proof. And when the choice is between maybe and already, coaches tend to side with the safer bet. That leaves Higgins in a tough spot. He's done just about everything in his power, but it still might not be enough. And with Harbaugh publicly tipping his hand, the writing may already be on the wall. And the more you zoom out, the clearer the picture gets. Baltimore's linebacker depth chart is starting to look set in stone. Harbaugh's words leave little room for debate. Jake Hummel is going to make the Ravens roster in 2025. And if that's the case, Jay Higgins' odds shrink dramatically. Sure, the Ravens could keep an extra linebacker by sacrificing depth at another position, but that would be a risky move for a team as balanced as Baltimore. The tough part is Higgins didn't really do anything wrong. If anything, he proved he's a smart, versatile, instinctive football player. On many NFL rosters, he'd probably already be penciled in as a piece of the future. But in Baltimore, the internal competition and heavy emphasis on special teams make his path much tougher. One thing is clear. The Ravens are prioritizing players who can make an immediate impact in every phase of the game. That's exactly what Hummel brings on special teams, which is why he's likely to stick. Higgins, on the other hand, could end up being one of those preseason stars who gets cut simply because the numbers didn't work out. If that happens, don't expect him to stay unemployed for long. With the kind of preseason he just had, other teams will be knocking quickly. That's a reality for Baltimore in 2025. The roster is so deep that even standout performers may soon be suiting up in another uniform. John Harbaugh's message couldn't be any clearer. In 2025, the Ravens are going to sweat the details, and special teams could be the make-or-break factor for who stays on this roster. Jay Higgins flashed big-time talent in the preseason, but with Harbaugh openly backing Jake Hummel and putting a spotlight on that phase of the game, this competition looks as brutal as it gets. Baltimore's roster is deep, overflowed with options, and that means even some guys who balled out on the field might not survive final cuts. So here's the real question. Should the Ravens bend the numbers to keep Higgins around, or fully trust Hummel as their special teams anchor? That decision could shape not only the present, but also the future of Baltimore's linebacker room. One thing's for sure, as the cut-down deadline looms, no one spot is truly safe.
And if you, just like me, are passionate about the world of football and want to learn more about the Ravens' legacy, don't leave this video without sharing it with that friend who is also a Baltimore Ravens fan and will love this content. See those video suggestions on your screen? The first one was handpicked just for you, and the other is a recommendation from YouTube itself. See you there, and until the next video, go Flock.